Thank you for joining us for this session on opportunities in India's gas market. Please welcome Mr. Nolty Theriot, Senior Vice President, U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum, for welcoming remarks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on India's gas market. As most of you know, the United States and India have shared a very successful strategic energy partnership over the years, and the two countries have significantly increased their cooperation in the sector with the creation of the U.S.-India Gas Task Force. And with the Indian government's goal to increase the contribution of gas in its energy mix from 6 to 15% by 2030, a huge opportunity has not only been presented to the U.S. gas producers and investors, but also for both governments to collaborate and cooperate through knowledge sharing and joint R&D projects. Today's discussion is very timely and will focus on these opportunities, and we're honored to have PNGRB Chairperson Dinesh Sarraf and FERC Chairman Neil Chatterjee with us today, along with a distinguished group of executives from the private sector. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome PNGRB Chairperson Sarraf to make his opening remarks. Mr. Sarraf, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to your insights on India's natural gas sector and the great work PNGRB is doing to expand India's gas infrastructure across the country. Over to you, sir. Mr. Sarraf, you're on mute. You have to unmute.
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me begin by thanking US-India Strategic Partnership Forum for organizing this event and having me here. Chairman Chatterjee and other dignitaries present. Good morning and good evening to everybody. United States economy has transformed itself from a net hydrocarbon importer to net hydrocarbon exporter in last some years. So far as natural gas is concerned, from a net importer of 3.8 TCF of gas in 2007 to almost zero net import in 2017, and when 2019 came, we saw 1.9 TCF of net export of natural gas from the United States. When I see and compare the two economies of the United States and India, I find that the two economies of our countries are quite complementary to each other in many areas, and energy is one of such areas. United States has exportable gas. India has huge gas market potential. In fact, the demand of natural gas in India has to grow and rather multiply in the coming years from 6% to 15% share in energy basket, with growth in the overall energy demand. Also, Indian gas demand has potential to grow 3 to 4 times in the next 10 to 15 years. Production would also increase, but the growth in production would be far slower. That's why the gas imports are expected to increase in a big way. And that's where I see the scope for cooperation between the Indian economy and the US economy. US has learned lessons in gas market development, and here the gas market is quite open, developed, competitive, and it encourages efficiency and it is transparent. India has to internalize some of these aspects. US has reached this stage in several decades, and we would like to develop our markets in the much faster in the next few years. And here we would like to learn from our US friends, from their experience which they have gained in last several decades. India invites investment for its growth, for development in infrastructure, for increasing our production base. Towards that end, India has in the last few years significantly improved its ease of doing business index, and we need to further improve it. And we understand that development of transparent energy markets would help us in achieving this. We invite US corporates to India for investment in upstream, downstream, pipelines, and even manufacturing in the gas sector. As gas regulator, PNGRB has taken several initiatives which I would like to discuss and seek guidance from US friends for our future steps. Thank you.
Thank you for your insights, Chairman Sarraf, and your steadfast leadership at PNGRB. Now I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Leonard Crook from ICF International, for his opening remarks. Over to you, Leonard.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chairperson Sarraf, for your comments. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm Leonard Crook with ICF in our Washington, D.C. offices, obviously at home today. I will be the moderator for our panel discussion on the opportunities in India's natural gas market. So those of us who've been in the gas industry for a long time, India presents really a fascinating opportunity. It has a huge energy market. Gas is a small but growing share of that market. Today, consumption is something around 140 million cubic meters a day. And if India is successful in reaching its goal of 15% of the energy mix by 2030, we can see a fourfold increase in the amount of natural gas consumption in the coming decade. The market is growing because of population, the economy is growing, new technologies, and a growing sophisticated industrial base in India. And the PNGRB has a really key role in this, not only in the expansion of gas into industry, but also the expansion of gas into the domestic uses of gas, commercial and residential. Already, PNGRB has licensed 228 city gas distribution systems. Those are local gas distribution systems to us in the States, and more is to come. And so by the end of the decade, we can see gas access in many of the districts, most of the districts across India. So the opportunities are quite substantial, but so are the benefits. The benefits that this is going to bring to India are quite clear. It's going to reduce air pollution. We're going to see a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, improved efficiency in industrial processes. Gas will be giving India a healthier environment, and especially where it can integrate with and support renewable energy. The challenges to realizing these goals are also somewhat substantial. Foremost, of course, is to build out the infrastructure, the transmission lines, the CDG systems, the import facilities. Financing this infrastructure is also a challenge. And then creating the conditions throughout the economy and the government to support a natural gas market where it can grow and flourish. As the chairperson said, the United States has gone through many of the same challenges that India is facing today. Here in the United States, we've learned some lessons, and we would like to share those with India. We have the largest gas market in the world in the United States. We have a lot of gas. We have the technologies, we have the know-how, the technical and operational know-how to assist India in reaching its goals. So our panel today consists of representatives from both the United States and India who are at the forefront of making change happen. We're honored to have Chairperson Sarraf here. We also have Mike Train of Emerson Automation Solutions, Bill Davis with ExxonMobil, Ashwani Dudeja with Shell, and Akhil Mehrotra with Pipeline Infrastructure Limited. So what I'm going to be doing is putting some questions to our panel. And Chairperson Sarraf, if you want to interject something, anything along the way, you're the chairperson, you're free to do that. So, and I may cue you from time to time to see if you have anything to add. But first I'm going to turn to Mike. Mike, you're executive president of Emerson Automation Solutions. what I've read of Emerson, Emerson is very well positioned to provide the kinds of hardware and services and consulting to a growing gas sector in India. So given the aggressive CGD goals and the large demand we can expect for equipment and software and services, how does Emerson view and how are you approaching this market?
Leonard, thanks for being our leader on the panel, and welcome to Chairman Sarraf and everybody out there that's supporting the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum conference this week. This is really amazing to do this in virtual times. Leonard, you know, we're viewing the opportunities in India to be pretty amazing here in the next 10 years. You know, especially the evolution in this gas discussion that we're having today. You know, where we are now, where we'll be in 2030. Will be an amazing difference. And, you know, India is going to build out the world's most modern gas infrastructure over these next 10 years. So it's pretty interesting. Emerson serves this from the automation standpoint. So we provide the instruments and the valves and the control systems and the software and the engineering and the services to really support really everywhere along the gas value chain, whether that's liquefaction, receiving, pipeline terminal, and as you just referenced, really that last few kilometers, that city gas distribution and getting everybody connected. So we get to play across all of those different places. We've got 7,000 people in India. We've been there for many decades, so we've been able to participate and grow as India is growing. But very excited right now about what's going on and where we can take this going forward here.
Leonard, if I could just jump in real quick, I want to welcome FERC Chairman Chatterjee, who I see just joined us. Good to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Good to see you all.
As most of you know, Chairman Chatterjee has successfully provided the regulatory certainty that's facilitated investment in U.S.'s growing gas infrastructure. And it's great to have Chairman Chatterjee here. We look forward to hearing about your collaboration with PNGRB and all the great work you're doing in India. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, to make some opening remarks, if you'd like.
Yes, thank you all again for having me. Just want to make sure I'm coming through loud and clear.
You are.
Perfect. So you want me to just roll right into my remarks, or are we starting?
That'd be great.
All right, fantastic. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. In this new virtual world, I can still say that it's an honor to be virtually sitting alongside Chairperson Sarraf, even if only virtually, and to be presented with the opportunity to participate alongside so many tremendous panelists. I've always thought that frequent and open communication with industry participants is essential to being an effective regulator, and I'm very interested to hear the perspective of all of our panelists today. Although I'm participating today through my professional role as chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, my interest in India is also very personal. As some of you may know, my family originally hails from India, so the future of this incredible country and its people is near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of opportunity for India to advance as an energy leader in the Indo-Pacific region. Working together with our partners in the US government and our counterparts in India, we can bring new opportunities and prosperity to an important partner and friend to the United States. Throughout the world, countries such as ours are facing new energy realities as this sector is rapidly evolving. Technological advancements have significantly expanded the availability of natural gas in the United States and LNG worldwide, while at the same time, renewables continue to be deployed in greater numbers. Here in the United States, the availability of abundant natural gas has allowed us to utilize this lower carbon fuel to provide a reliable, safe, and affordable energy source for millions of consumers. Natural gas has been central to the development of our power sector as we know it today, and it continues to play an essential role as we undergo transitions in our energy landscape. While we at FERC are fuel neutral, I think it's hard to deny just how much all Americans have benefited from a thriving energy economy fueled by resources such as natural gas. It's my hope that the people of India will similarly be able to reap the benefits of the increased use of natural gas in their power, transportation, and manufacturing sectors. Of course, the ability to fully utilize natural gas across sectors in the United States was not a given. To be able to fully tap into the availability and utilization of natural gas at the levels that we are seeing today required bold regulatory reforms. These reforms enabled the development of competitive gas markets, increased coordination amongst gas and electric markets, and had significant investments in infrastructure that provided a means of delivering natural gas to end users. As those who have watched the development of U.S. markets know, these efforts were far from easy and are by no means behind us. We continually review and revise our rules to ensure that our markets remain competitive, providing the greatest benefit to consumers. Likewise, the build-out of infrastructure continues to be a priority here in the United States. As the key regulatory body responsible for approving the siting of natural gas pipelines, the Commission strives to provide the necessary regulatory certainty to facilitate investment in this necessary infrastructure. Having gone through these regulatory changes and market development ourselves, I believe the United States, and FERC specifically, is in a unique position to offer insights into natural gas and other market reforms that can play a pivotal role in India's energy reforms. That's why, as chairman of the Commission, I have made sharing the benefits of those insights with our international partners, especially India, a priority. Currently, we are engaging with our Indian regulatory counterparts on a number of fronts. We have an existing MOU with the PNGRB, and I know that our staff has found significant value in our engagements through the U.S.-India Gas Task Force, assisting the PNGRB as it pursues regulatory reforms that will unlock the role that natural gas can play in India's economy. By the same token, the State Department co-led Flexible Resources Initiative has allowed us to engage with several regulators and begin to focus on issues like maximizing the cost-effective use of natural gas in the power sector. I know that many challenges still lie ahead, but we stand at the ready to assist as India continues to build out its pipeline infrastructure, engages in market reforms in both the gas and electricity sectors, and pursues its aggressive renewables targets. With that, I will end my brief remarks as I am eager to hear the perspectives of our panelists on what they see as the opportunities and challenges to unlocking the full potential of natural gas in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Chatterjee. We appreciate those really great remarks. I'm going to, at this time, still continue. I have put a question to Mike, and I want to follow up on that. It's really good to know that Emerson has been paying attention to what's going on in India, that Emerson has a presence in India. And so my question to you is, given the growth potential we see in the CGD sector, and you obviously think it's a real growth potential, are other American companies, do you see other American companies looking at the market the same way you are? And if they aren't, why aren't they? And could you just comment on the broader potential for a broader spectrum of American companies?
Yeah, sure, Leonard, thank you. You know, I do see a lot of American companies interested in India, especially the gas sector of India. We are seeing whether they're energy providers like Bill's case, or they're transporters, or whatever the case may be. We have a lot of companies that are showing up. You know, I think the real guidance here is you come, show up, get connected. The India market has its differences with the U.S. markets. There's different dynamics. There's different things you need to learn to navigate. And you got to be in the country, and you got to really learn how to focus. You know, where exactly you're going to go. So that local strong presence, I think, is really important. You know, references to regulation already. I can say from a manufacturing company and a services providing company, you know, regulation has always been a challenge in India, but the last 5 years there's been dramatic improvements there. I want to salute the progress that we've had on the regulatory front. And now there's this whole culture of startups, you know, and there's just amazingly talented people in India. So I think people see that at the city gas distribution specifically, where we're going to build the market demand for gas, there's tremendous opportunities there. And again, I think these next 10 years are going to be pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. I'm encouraged to hear that there's that much interest and excitement about coming into India. Speaking of coming into India, well, ExxonMobil has been here for some time. You've been, Bill, ExxonMobil's been supplying LNG to India for years. How do you view the future market growth for LNG in India?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on this session. It's great to see allies in the U.S.-India energy story. There's a lot of work to be done, and it's good to see people working at all hours around the planet to make that happen. You know, ExxonMobil has seen the potential for LNG going back decades as the pioneers of bringing LNG to India back in the 90s. We saw the role that LNG could play, and we committed to it. And when we look at the picture today, that LNG story, that potential is very much there. We're seeing this country with a population demographic wave that's coming in, with the economy that's going to follow that, and all that is going to drive the need for energy and cleaner energy that can drive also the social and environmental agenda for the country. Today, we're seeing more ways that gas is being used around the country, in more ways, and we'll talk about it later, about getting it to the end user sooner, faster, and cheaper. So that, again, will allow LNG to leverage its potential. Of course, it's been referenced before. You have a situation where, despite best efforts, the domestic gas supply, isn't likely to peak and then start declining at a time where the gas demand is going like that. And what does that mean? That means LNG fills the gap. And that's a good news story, because today around the world, LNG is becoming more and more available. There are a lot of commitments to projects. Our own company has efforts underway and existing production around the world. And when we look at the US-India story, we see one of matching a place that has the energy, cleaner energy, as Chairman Chatterjee mentioned, and aspirations to export it to the world. We have our own Golden Pass terminal, 15 or 16 million tons of export capacity under construction now. And those sorts of things are going to add to the potential for LNG in India and help create that India story we're all looking for.
So clearly, LNG has a role to play in heavy industry, in power, in transportation. How do you see LNG fitting in with the push to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to improve air quality generally in India, and also the push towards renewables? How does LNG match up with that?
Well, at the baseline, we see India needing a lot more energy of all types, but LNG and natural gas helping move India towards the India that India wants to be, prosperous, with jobs and industry, a healthier place, as you mentioned, and also position India to do its part in the global efforts on climate change. part of the story starts with lower emissions in the base case compared to some of the alternative fuels when you get gas in the mix. So of course, you look at versus a coal-fired power generator, you're talking about half the CO2, really taking most of the NOx and SOx out of the equation. Particulates are much less of a concern under that, and the indirect benefits of natural gas. If you think about it versus a coal and a mining thing, we're not competing with land and water use that is really in India needed for food, to keep our people healthy and doing all they need to do. Another part of this story is that LNG and natural gas can help do the heavy lifting at the scale that India needs. If you look at anyone's chart on energy demand, it's going like that. And you don't have time to wait around and hope that new ways of doing it come around. Natural gas can deliver a lot of that new energy growth today. We know how to do it. The people on this call all work in different angles of making it happen, and they have been making it happen. So we know that natural gas and LNG need to factor in. We see also that story of natural gas playing so many different roles, Leonard, whether it's in power, cars and trucks, which is a new area, industry, chemicals, fertilizer, and cooking, and doing all that oftentimes with a much lower environmental footprint. So you bring all those things together, and then lastly, you find that LNG can help. It plays well with other fuels, particularly renewables. When you think about the thing that is a limiter to how far renewables can go is the intermittency question. And LNG can help address that, and also help address it in a distributed generation system where it may be hard to justify a pipeline to get the gas there, but LNG can help supply natural gas in a power system that better meets what India is hoping to do. So we see potential. We see LNG being important in bringing in the next energy, and that's why we at ExxonMobil are really committed to the India story.
Chairman Chatterjee, might you want to comment on possibly what the U.S. is doing to help promote LNG exports?
Thank you. It's a great question. As I mentioned in my remarks, I think LNG has been a boon both for the United States, and the expansion of our LNG export capabilities has really allowed us to provide natural gas as a low carbon option for countries looking to move away from other fuel sources. As a regulator, FERC is responsible for the permitting of LNG facilities. So in that role, we strive to provide regulatory certainty to those investing in this necessary infrastructure by being consistent and timely in our approach to evaluating applications for LNG export facilities. And I think that certainty and stability is a critical component of promoting U.S. LNG exports, just knowing that you have that regulatory certainty when you ally with the United States. We are also very engaged, as I mentioned, with our international regulatory partners, aiding those countries who are seeking to expand their use of natural gas and who really turn to us for insights on the changes necessary to move their power sector in that direction. And so I think, in a host of areas, as a regulator, we really do play a key role in LNG export.
Well, thank you. One last question for Bill, changing direction a little bit. We've seen this new India gas exchange come up, the IGX. From the standpoint of an LNG importer, how do you view this development of a potential market hub for natural gas in India?
Well, thank you, Leonard. Clearly, the India Gas Exchange is a big step in the right direction in terms of making it easier to move, buy, and sell gas. And, what that does is allows industry to better meet the needs of India faster. Now, obviously, you have to set that up, and kudos to the team at PNGRB and others that have been part of that, put the work in. Setting that up is, probably the biggest hurdle. Over time, of course, what will happen is as we get more infrastructure, we have more suppliers, there'll be more trading and so forth, and it'll bring new value to that idea of a gas exchange. For me, it's a great example of innovation. This is innovation in a regulatory space. It lends itself to what India has seen in other countries. There's a lot of dimensions that India needs in innovation to make the energy picture work. And one of the places we're looking at is all around the question of how do we get gas faster and cheaper to where it can do the most good in India. That's why at ExxonMobil we've been working on the virtual pipeline concept. We know that gas pipelines take a long time to build. They have a certain economic profile that can be challenging and so forth. And we asked ourselves, aren't there places in India that could use natural gas today if we could get it to them? And what's the way to do it? Moving natural gas in containers, insulated containers, and smaller shipments, taking advantage of the existing rail and road and ship possibilities in India is a way of doing that. We think we can lower the cost of India's energy bill, convert more people to natural gas earlier and move us towards that 15%. And along the way, of course, clean the air, clean the water, and do all the things that gas can do. The challenge is, it's easier said than done. And a lot of people have talked about, if we could only get gas in transportation and move it around as LNG. The challenge is you have so many different players. That's why I love seeing the screen filled with different people, because that's what it takes. You have so many stakeholders, and the only way for that to happen is for people to work together in a collective sense. You have end users, you have the suppliers, you have the terminal builders and operators, you have pipeline crew, you have people to move trucks. All those things need to come together, and they need the help of the government. The government, from a regulatory standpoint, to streamline the innovation that's going on in for example, the virtual pipeline space. You need even just the encouragement from the government and the ministry, which thankfully we really have, to get things going. Because it is a case where people want to know, is this thing going or not? Because the whole chain is dependent on collective action. So this is that case where government support is important, and the support of bodies like this and initiatives like this, where we see, key people in all aspects of this realm between US and India, helping make this happen.
Well, thank you, Bill. I want to turn now to Ashwani, who's the country head of India. Shell has been in India for a very long time, since at least the 1920s, by my reckoning. You've been in natural gas and oil. Your recent acquisitions have been in renewables, however. And so what role do you see as gas having in a clean energy transition in India?
Thank you, Leonard. I hope everyone can hear me well. And good morning and good evening to all my fellow panelists and participants. Leonard, India is the fifth largest power generation. India has the fifth largest power generation capacity in the world, and third largest in terms of electricity production. And our per capita consumption is still, one of the lowest. It is, half of what the global average is. Which means, and there are some studies like the NEF New Energy Outlook, which predicts that, by 2045, our power requirements are going to grow sixfold, making it the second largest power generation or consumption country in the world. Now, at the moment, the renewable penetration in India is only about 10%, and we are doing good in terms of, maintaining the grid balance. But we know that, as the penetration keeps on increasing, we will need, additional sources to balance the renewables. And what we see today, the role of thermal generation as being, a baseload kind of a requirement will actually move to, what already exists in, a lot of matured economies called as flexible peaking resource. And gas is only one of the many options which are available to complement the renewables. Globally, it has been observed that gas has become more prominent in markets where the renewable penetration is higher, and coal's share has been reducing, not just because of the stricter environmental norms, but also its lower adaptability to the variability which is required to complement the renewables. And as I said, this correlation between the penetration of renewable power versus the thermal requirement keeps on increasing as the penetration of renewable increases, goes beyond, let's say, 15% or so. Now, all this means is that we need a more flexible power solution. We have insufficient grid connectivity. We have, at least as of now, higher battery costs, and there are concerns around hydro storage, which makes gas as one of the most natural ally for renewables as a balancing fuel. And it really supports, gas-based power really supports the integration of variable electricity generation, because it can quickly compensate for dips in solar or wind supply, and also respond to rapid increases when required. They are generally cheaper and faster to build compared to coal-based power plants. And while on a standalone basis, it may be costlier to produce power from gas compared to coal, but when the cost of externalities like the emissions, the water stress, the air pollutions, and the impact it has on the health cost is added, gas actually, the whole comparison swings in favor of gas-based power.
India meeting its 15% goal by 2030.
Sorry, Leonard, I missed the initial part. Can you repeat the question?
My question was, clearly that you see power as being having a significant role to play in India meeting its 15% goal by 2030. What about transportation? Do you see that as having any kind of a significant role to play?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think in general, India, has a substantial latent demand for gas, and the government has really undertaken some very useful steps. Especially, the regulator has been, very proactive in the last few years. There are more than 15,000 kilometers of gas pipelines which are under construction. Some of them have been provided viability gap funding by the government of India. There has been an award of 136 new geographical areas in the city gas distribution licensing in the last 2 years. And there has also been, a budgetary allocation of nearly 40 billion Indian rupee for clean air plans. So these are all the steps in the right direction, and are expected to create, a new demand contributing to India's goal of 15% gas consumption in the overall energy mix. However, we feel that this should be complemented by, some more reforms on the market side to fully realize the potential. Now, on the power side, we know India has set a very huge target of 175 gigawatt by 2022 and 450 gigawatt by 2030 from renewable sources. And as I mentioned earlier, gas has a significant advantage when used alongside renewable power. So that's one area, of course, but there is also the industrial sector, which is expanding, as well as looking at natural gas as a potential fuel to meet their energy requirements, while also maintaining the emissions norm. And to that extent, the recent order by National Green Tribunal for a small city in the state of Gujarat called Morbi is a great example, where the gas demand grew threefold and today contributes to 1/3 of the overall demand of the city gas distribution company in Gujarat. And lastly, India already is a large market for natural gas vehicles, which and CNG has played a very important role in providing economical and greener options for the smaller vehicles in intra-city segment. But LNG, as Bill mentioned, has a significant role to play in the long distance heavy duty trucking and even the interstate buses. And just as a reference point, there are nearly 250,000 trucks which get added to Indian roads every year. Even if we convert a small proportion of that to LNG, it means a huge opportunity for LNG demand.
What are the most serious bottlenecks you see to realizing this potential?
So, as I mentioned earlier, there are certain, both policy as well as regulatory reforms which are fairly important to implement, and that will contribute towards, India's goal of 15% gas share. First and foremost, on the financial side, is bringing gas into GST, which will allow the end users to claim input tax credit and improve the competitiveness of gas against the alternate fuels, which already incidentally are under GST. Even again on the financial side, some of the fiscal incentives that have been given to electric vehicles need to also be extended to CNG and LNG vehicles in terms of the tax rate. At the moment, the LNG and CNG vehicles are taxed at a very high rate of 28% compared to 5% for EVs. So something the government must consider to improve the participation of gas. Second, and a very important one on the regulatory side, is unbundling of integrated pipeline and marketing activities. We still have in the country, several organizations who are, doing both pipeline transportation as well as marketing. And when the PNGRB Act was passed in 2006 by the Indian government, it was envisaged that these companies at some stage will be unbundled. However, some of that is still yet to happen. So that's another important one. And then, even for, things like gas hub, you mentioned earlier and Bill talked about it, there are, standardizations of gas transportation contracts required across various entities. There are 3 key entities for gas transportation in India, and I'm sure Akhil is going to talk about it, but all 3 of them do not have, the same similar contractual structure. So what will really help is in terms of, standardization of gas contracts, offering, more flexibility on the gas contract transportation contracts, like, booking capacity on reasonable endeavor basis, rationalizing the system penalties like overrun and imbalance, etc. And then, setting up of an independent pipeline operator who can, cut across all of these pipeline operators and help, the development of the gas markets. And last but not the least, I'm not going to ignore power, which is very important. And that's a policy for, we already have a policy for, hybrid wind and solar. And based on some efforts from the industry, the government also came out with a policy for renewable and thermal for round-the-clock power tenders. But it's a bit unfortunate that, at the moment, what thermal means is, coal-based. So, it is kind of contradictory when, coal-based power is complemented with renewable. What we really request the government and, the bodies like USISPF to advocate is for a specific policy for gas-based power complementing the renewable.
Well, thank you. That's very insightful. I'm going to ask Akhil, CEO of Pipeline Infrastructure Limited. You are an unbundled pipeline. So let me put to you what I see as part of the problem in India with infrastructure. It's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. The market is immature, but at the same time, there's a need to build for capital to build out the pipeline capacity, which in turn is necessary to grow the market. But initially, revenues aren't there to give investors, particularly private investors and lenders, the security that they want to finance developing new pipelines. So we haven't seen much participation by the private lenders and equity providers in this sector. If I stated this problem correctly, how much access, how important is access to private capital an issue for growing out the system?
Sure. Thanks, Leonard. Thanks, my fellow panel members. Let me set the context first. What is happening in India is, as you rightly said, for building any pipeline, you need an anchor load, right? The FERC chairman would definitely know you do open seasons when the basic capacity is booked by the power companies, right? That's what happens worldwide. Unfortunately, in India today, the power sector, the gas cannot go to power sector because of the affordability, and the merit order dispatch plays a spoilsport. Hence, the pipelines today need to rely on other components of the market, like fertilizers, like petrochemicals, and other industrial segments. What the regulator currently is doing is that they are actually and thanks to Dr. Sarraf, Mr. Sarraf here, that he has actually built kind of a huge pipeline of city gas networks, which is going to come. 130 cities has been bid out. There has been and there will be kind of a lot of demand from these, but it will be a gradual increase in these demand. Hence, what can be done to finance these pipelines? Because we need steady cash flows to not only give returns to the investors, but also service the debt. Without a large anchor load like power, it's going to be a little difficult. What can be done is, as Ashwani has also talked about, at some stage, power has to start playing a role in terms of gas-based generation. Because if India has a large kind of a renewable target, gas has to get into power sector. And I'm very hopeful that power will start playing an anchor load slowly and steadily as we go around. As we also go next 2 to 3 years, the demand from CGD sectors, which has started now building up, will also come up. So all this will start making these pipelines more viable. And for investors across in the US, I think there is a huge investment opportunity which sits here. Today, India has around 16,000 kilometers of pipeline. Another 15,000 is being built. Compare that to US, few lakh kilometers of pipe kind of exist there for a viable market to develop. So at least India can have 4-fold increase in pipelines, and we need large capital to come in. There are investors like us. Brookfield has put in money in the East-West pipeline, which I head. And I expect with a lot of reforms which are coming in the sector, domestic gas pricing getting freed up, the kind of regulatory reforms which the PNGRB is trying to bring, these pipelines will become more and more viable. There will be regions where pipelines are unviable, and the government has been kind enough to give VGF, which is viability gap funding. And with a lot of these regulatory changes, I hope the viability of these pipelines will increase. And with markets developing, with exchanges coming, more and more gas coming from the East Coast, I think more and more pipeline investment will be there. And I can see a lot of private companies will line up to invest in India now.
What are some of the financing approaches you believe might help to jumpstart the pipelines and attract more private capital?
Sure. Okay. So basically, yeah. So basically, till some of these pipeline segments are unviable, other than VGF, it won't work. Kind of, the regulator has to look at giving some of the viability gap funding. But what the government of India can do, and I think they are thinking in the right direction. And we can take a leaf out of the road sector in India. I'm just giving you example because we are in road sector also. What the government did there, the National Highway Authority here, they actually monetized the roads they owned, and used that funds to build roads which were unviable in the initial years. What can be done by the government here? There are a lot of pipelines here sitting in the government sector that can be monetized by the government. A lot of private companies, pension funds are happy to invest in those pipelines, run them efficiently. That funds can be used by government and these companies to build some of the pipelines in the unviable sector, run it for 1 or 2 years, again divest them, monetize them. So that model, in my view, can work very well for India. That's been experimented in the road sector, and that can definitely work in the pipeline because that will also do away with the requirement of VGF by the government. So if that model is brought in, I think government is seriously working on it. I expect them to come out with this model in next 1 or 2 years. So that will raise fund for the government entities to start building pipelines, say in eastern part of India, in southern part of India. It doesn't have ready market, but that once the pipeline comes, and again, as you started, Leonardo, there's a chicken and egg story. Some of the unviable pipelines have to be built by the government by raising funds for the current pipelines, which can be monetized. I think that's the best financing construct which can work in the short term. As we go down in, I think, 3 to 5 years with market developing, the gas being used in transport segment, CGD volume picking up, some of these pipelines will start becoming viable on its own, and will find banks backing the debt also.
Leonard, if I could jump in real quick before we wrap up, I would like to ask Chairman Sarraf and Chairman Chatterjee if they'd like to make any last remarks before we close the session. Mr. Sarraf?
Yeah, thank you. Let me first say that some of the reforms which we have taken and which are on way. I would like to first mention about the natural gas trading exchange, because that is one reform, but that encompasses several other reforms which are definitely required for exchange to operationalize. So, for example, mention was made that there needs to be a common gas transportation agreement which works across the entities. So that is something which we are working on, and the industry would see the draft of that very soon, maybe within a fortnight or so, for comments on that, and it should come as per our plan by end of November. Very transparent access to the pipelines by access arrangement. That for that also the draft is ready, and that will also come along with the gas transportation agreement regulation. Thirdly, which is there is the tariff reform. The problem with Indian tariff is, and which means that which makes the gas affordable, unaffordable in some of the far areas, I mean, which are further from the gas source. That when the gas has to travel through several pipelines, one has to pay cascading tariff. So the gas tariff increases, meaning thereby the gas becomes unaffordable to the far-flung areas. So we are trying to unify the tariff. We recently had the consultation session with all the stakeholders, and I would say that that was quite enriching even for us. And based on the many of the suggestions, we are in the process of revising our approach, and we would come out maybe within 1 month the final notified tariff regulation on that, which would make gas affordable, and which would also take into account the concerns which most of the entities have mentioned in the consultation meeting. We are also trying to bring alongside the trading exchange the online real-time bulletin board, which would tell the all the buyers and sellers of gas that how much capacity is available in each segment of the pipeline, so that the capacity can be bought and sold. Another thing which we are trying to build is the capacity trading. Also, we are trying to bring in the exchange from the very beginning, which could be from the beginning of 2021. The pipeline capacity trading deals can also be done. One more thing which is being done is LNG trading. While the gas would be traded in the gas exchange, the LNG also could be traded. We are in discussion with certain stakeholders that if it is possible to trade the LNG so that those consumers which are not connected with pipelines, if they want to transport the LNG through trucks, so whether it is possible through exchange. I think it should be possible, but let's see that.
Chairman Sarraf, if I don't mean to interrupt you. We have Vice President Pence starting in 2 minutes, and I just want to give Neil one last second to make a few closing remarks, if you don't mind, before we have to jump to the Vice President's speech.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very brief. This has been a great discussion. I think the main takeaway, policy matters. And to build on what Chairman Sarraf was laying out, the open and competitive markets that we rely on and benefit from today could not have come about without a major policy shift that occurred through a series of FERC orders and congressional action, most pivotal step being to move to open access and require the pipelines unbundle or separate their transportation and sales services all the way back to the natural gas wellhead. And these types of policy decisions are things that FERC can share our expertise and experience as India moves forward. Thank you for convening this discussion and giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman Chatterjee. Chairman Sarraf, we appreciate your time. I want to thank all the panelists for a lively discussion. We hope you all stay safe and look forward to seeing you all soon and continuing our good work with the Gas Task Force. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.